the roar of the Colosseum, the glint of steel, the primal clash of warrior against warrior or man against beast. For centuries, the gladiator has stood as the ultimate, fearsome symbol of Roman brutality, a living testament to an empire's insatiable thirst for bloodsport. His life, a fleeting moment of glory or a grisly end, captivated millions, shaping our modern perception of ancient Rome's savage entertainment. We conjure images of the emperor's decisive thumb, the sand-soaking crimson, the ultimate price of a warrior's gamble. But what if the iconic image of the gladiator, grim and deadly as it was, obscures an even darker truth? What if the true abattoir of Roman entertainment wasn't the arena floor, but the thunderous oval of the Circus Maximus? Prepare to challenge everything you thought you knew. This documentary will reveal a shocking counter-narrative. Statistically, chariot racing, not gladiatorial combat, was the deadliest spectacle in ancient Rome. Across 24 immersive sections, we will journey into the heart of this ancient paradox. We will dissect the precarious design of the tracks, the flimsy engineering of the chariots, the untamed power of the horses, and the sheer, unbridled chaos of hundreds of thousands of spectators fueling a lethal pursuit. Why did these dizzying races, often dismissed as mere sport, claim exponentially more lives? And what does this astonishing disparity unveil about the values, obsessions, and dark underbelly of a society that reveled in bread and circuses? Join us as we uncover the true, horrifying death toll of Roman entertainment. For centuries, the gladiator has been the enduring, visceral symbol of Roman cruelty. Striking fear and awe, these warriors of the arena, with their ornate helmets and razor-sharp weapons, embodied a brutal ethos. Yet, behind the popular image of indiscriminate slaughter lay a surprisingly complex and structured world. Gladiatorial combat, far from being a chaotic free-for-all, operated within a unique framework of precise rules, specialized training, and even the potential for reprieve. From the heavily armed Murmillo to the net-wielding retiarius, each gladiator type was a specialist, trained in a particular style, their clashes unfolding as a deadly, choreographed dance rather than a simple bloodbath. This structured, individual combat environment, often misunderstood, forms the foundational contrast to the chaotic spectacle that would claim far more lives. While gladiators carved their legend in controlled duels, another class of Roman entertainer achieved unparalleled fame and fortune through sheer, unbridled speed: the charioteer. These weren't mere athletes. They were the rock stars of their age, driving thundering teams of horses around the perilous tracks of the Circus Maximus. Adorned in the colors of their factions, red, white, green, or blue, they inspired fanatical devotion, their names whispered with reverence and awe across the empire. Victories brought them immense wealth, public adoration, and monumental status, often outshining emperors in popularity. But this dazzling glory came at an unimaginable cost. Every race was a dizzying gamble with fate, a high-speed ballet on the razor's edge where even the slightest miscalculation meant instant, often gruesome, death. Their careers, though celebrated, were tragically brief, a constant dance with oblivion. The enduring image of Roman bloodsport, etched into our collective consciousness, is undoubtedly the gladiator, locked in a brutal struggle to the death within the Colosseum. We imagine a relentless torrent of blood, a constant stream of fatalities. Yet, when we delve into the stark historical records and archaeological findings, a shocking truth emerges. The arena's blood toll, while significant, pales in comparison to the carnage unleashed on the racetracks. Chariot racing, the supposed sport of kings and emperors, was statistically far more lethal than any individual gladiatorial combat. Why? Because the sheer scale, the breakneck speed, and the inherent, unmitigated chaos of a chariot race created a fatal equation. Multiple participants at maximum velocity in an enclosed space designed for collisions. This wasn't a duel. It was a mass casualty event waiting to happen, redefining Roman entertainment's true death toll. To understand why gladiatorial combat wasn't the unceasing bloodbath we often imagine, we must look to the Ludi, the gladiator schools. Here, these fighters were not treated as disposable cannon fodder, but as valuable, highly trained investments. A gladiator represented significant capital to his lanista, the owner of the school. Their extensive training was rigorous, focusing not just on spectacle, but primarily on survival. Days were spent honing weapon proficiency with heavy wooden swords, practicing defensive maneuvers against specialized instructors, doctors, and developing iron discipline. Every technique, every stance was designed to give them a calculated chance to emerge victorious, or at the very least, alive. This intensive, professional training transformed raw recruits into skilled combatants, significantly impacting their odds of seeing another day. Stepping into the vast amphitheater, the gladiator entered a world governed by strict rules, not wanton slaughter. Unlike the free-for-all often depicted in popular culture, gladiatorial combat was a highly controlled sport. Referees, known as summa rudis or secunda rudis, officiated each bout, ensuring adherence to the protocols. Specific weapon matchups were carefully chosen. A murmillo with his heavy shield and sword rarely faced a similarly equipped opponent, but rather a lighter, agile retiarius with net and trident. This deliberate asymmetry, combined with a clear understanding of the game's parameters, which included boundaries, forbidden strikes, and surrender signals, contributed to a relatively predictable and controlled environment. These meticulous regulations fundamentally reduced the element of random fatalities, allowing for a strategic, if brutal, contest. The iconic thumbs up or down gesture, immortalized in art and film, simplifies the complex reality of a gladiator's fate. While life and death did indeed hang on the whim of the emperor or, more commonly, the editor, the organizer of the games, the decision for missio, or reprieve, was far from arbitrary. A gladiator's skill, their bravery in defeat, or the sheer entertainment value they provided could sway the crowd and the editor. After all, a gladiator was an expensive asset, and a popular, skilled fighter was worth more alive, fighting another day, than dead. Their lives were not always forfeit. This complex interplay of public demand, financial investment, and individual prowess meant that many gladiators, particularly the best, earned mercy, sometimes even earning their freedom. The arena, therefore, was a place of judgment, but not always condemnation. Contrary to popular belief, where every gladiator fight ended in death, historical and archaeological research paints a more nuanced picture. Evidence from epitaphs, arena records, and even ancient graffiti suggests that many gladiators fought multiple bouts over several years, some accumulating dozens of victories. The fatality rate, while still undeniably high and certainly brutal, was likely lower than the common perception for career fighters. Skilled gladiators, particularly those who were popular crowd favorites or highly valuable to their lanista, had a decent chance of survival, with some even earning their rudis, a wooden sword symbolizing freedom and retirement. This unexpected resilience further distinguishes gladiatorial combat. While incredibly dangerous, it offered a calculated risk, a path to glory, or even a meager form of freedom, rather than a guaranteed, immediate death sentence. But if gladiatorial combat, with its training, rules, and potential for mercy, offered a fighter a calculated chance, chariot racing offered nothing of the sort. This brings us to the true crucible of Roman death, the Circus Maximus. More than just an arena, it was a colossal engineering marvel, designed to hold an unimaginable 250,000 spectators, making it the largest stadium in the ancient world. Here, up to 12 chariots, each pulled by 2 to 4 powerful horses, would thunder simultaneously around the treacherous, mile-long track, hurtling around hairpin turns, at incredible speeds. The sheer scale of participants, the physics of multiple collisions, the relentless speed, and the unforgiving design of the track itself amplified the potential for disaster exponentially. The Circus Maximus wasn't just a spectacle. It was a colossal death trap, a stage for mass carnage that claimed lives with brutal efficiency, dwarfing the fatalities of any gladiatorial duel. Unlike the heavily armored gladiators, whose very existence was a testament to Roman engineering for defense, the charioteer's ride was designed for precisely the opposite. Roman chariots were marvels of lightweight construction, built for one purpose: unadulterated speed. Crafted from delicate birchwood, wicker, and leather, these vehicles were skeletal frames barely capable of containing the immense power hitched to them. There was no thought given to occupant protection, no reinforced plating, no safety cage. In the chaotic maelstrom of the Circus Maximus, these flimsy contraptions shattered on impact, splintering into deadly projectiles of wood and metal. The charioteer, often little more than strapped in, was utterly exposed, a human target in a high-speed demolition derby, where their vehicle offered no defense, only the promise of immediate, violent disintegration upon the slightest misstep or collision. But if the chariot itself was a death trap, the motive force behind it was a volatile, untamed beast. A typical racing team, a quadriga, comprised 4 powerful horses, often half-wild stallions, bred for raw speed and stamina. Yet, legendary drivers like Diocles sometimes commanded teams of 6 or even 7, a Sejuges or Septimjuges, unleashing an almost unimaginable 250 horsepower. Imagine controlling that immense, unpredictable force, thousands of pounds of muscle and instinct, thundering around a confined track at speeds exceeding 35 miles per hour. These weren't docile beasts. They were high-strung athletes, easily spooked, prone to sudden swerves, kicks, and unpredictable surges. The charioteer's skill wasn't just in driving, but in wrestling this living, breathing avalanche of hooves and fury into submission, a monumental challenge that often ended in tragedy for both man and animal. The perilous journey began not on the track, but at the carioteers, the monumental starting gates of the circus. Imagine the scene. Up to 12 chariots, each powered by 4 to 7 straining horses, all crammed shoulder to shoulder, the air thick with tension, dust, and the scent of fear. When the mappa was dropped, these gates simultaneously sprung open, unleashing an explosive rush. It was less a start and more a controlled detonation of brute force and ambition. This immediate bottleneck into the critical first turn transformed the track into a high-density, high-speed collision zone. Charioteers jostled desperately for position, their whips cracking, horses rearing. The slightest miscalculation, a momentary lapse in control, could trigger a catastrophic pileup before the race had even truly begun, instantly claiming lives in a tangle of wood, leather, and flesh. Beyond the initial explosion from the carioteers, the track itself was littered with purpose-built dangers, none more infamous than the spina and its flanking meaty. The spina was the long, central barrier that divided the track, adorned with ornate monuments and lap counters. At each end stood the meaty, massive conical turning posts that were the nexus of all peril. To gain even a fraction of a second, charioteers were forced to hug these sharp turns as tightly as possible, risking everything to shave inches off the grueling 7 laps. This treacherous maneuver meant wheels. Grinding against stone, horses pressed dangerously close, and rivals vying for the same precious sliver of track. These meaty were not just markers. They were magnets for devastating, multi-chariot crashes, veritable killing zones where a simple scrape could send an entire team spinning into oblivion. For maximum control over their thunderous teams, Roman charioteers, or orgi, adopted a unique and incredibly dangerous practice. They wrapped the reins not around their hands, but around their waists. This gave them immense leverage and a direct connection to the horse's power, allowing for precise guidance even at top speeds. But it came at a horrific cost. In the event of a crash, this very connection became a death sentence. Instead of being thrown clear, the charioteer was inextricably bound to the runaway, tangled horses and splintering wreckage, destined to be dragged mercilessly across the rough track. They carried a small, curved knife, a falx, tucked into their tunic, a desperate last-ditch tool to cut themselves free. Yet, in the terrifying blur of a collision, reaching for, let alone using, this tiny blade was often an impossible act, making the falx a symbol of a brutal, often futile, fight for survival. In a Roman chariot race, one crash rarely remained isolated. The sheer speed, the close proximity of competitors, and the blinding dust meant a single incident often triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. The Romans, with grim precision, had a term for these devastating mass pileups, naufragium, meaning shipwreck. It was a truly apt description. Imagine the scene. A chariot, perhaps crippled at the meaty, becomes an instant obstacle. The following teams, unable to swerve or stop in time, smash into it, adding to the growing wreckage. Horses rear, scream, and fall, their powerful bodies becoming a lethal obstacle course. Chariots splinter into 1,000 pieces, drivers are flung, entangled, or crushed. What begins as a singular accident quickly escalates into an uncontrollable tangle of wood, leather, flesh, and bone, a brutal naufragium, leaving a field of carnage in its wake. Surviving the initial impact of a chariot crash was merely the first, often temporary, reprieve. For the fallen Ariga, the nightmare was far from over. Disentangled from their vehicle, they were now a vulnerable, prone target on a live racetrack. The terrifying prospect of being trampled by the thundering hooves of other racing teams was imminent and agonizing. Picture the ground vibrating, the shadow of charging horses engulfing you, helpless to move. Or worse still, if they remained tethered by their waist-wrapped reins, they faced the horrific fate of being dragged hundreds of feet, their body pummeled and torn by the track's unforgiving surface, their bones shattered, flesh ripped. Gruesome injuries, dismemberment, or instant death beneath a subsequent wave of racing chariots were common outcomes. The stadium's roar became a symphony of terror for the fallen. While legendary charioteers like Scorpus or Diocles were undoubtedly masters of their craft, possessing extraordinary skill, courage, and tactical genius, the sheer chaotic nature of chariot racing meant that survival, more often than victory, hinged disproportionately on one unpredictable factor: luck. The unforgiving speed, the untamed power of multiple horses, and the constant, inescapable threat of sudden collision created an environment where pure driving prowess could be instantly nullified by a stray hoof, a collapsing wheel, or a rival's desperate maneuver. It was a brutal lottery where even the greatest champions faced a coin flip every lap. Chariot racing wasn't just a test of charioteers' endurance or their command of the reins. It was a desperate gamble against overwhelming odds, where brute force, random chance, and the fickle favor of the gods often decided who lived to race another day, and who added to the shocking death toll. In the thunderous roar of the Circus Maximus, the concept of safety, as we understand it today, was not just secondary, it was entirely alien. Roman engineering excelled at grand structures, yet their approach to human life in these arenas was starkly different. There were no crash barriers to cushion impact, no immediate medical teams rushing onto the track, no stringent rules designed to protect the charioteers from their own ambition or the brute force of their rivals. The very essence of the spectacle was the raw, unadulterated danger. Every turn, every jostle, every breathtaking surge of speed was designed to thrill the masses, to push both man and beast to their absolute limits, with human survival often an afterthought in the relentless pursuit of excitement. The thrill of the gamble, the constant flirtation with disaster, was the real show. This inherent danger was compounded by sheer volume. Unlike gladiatorial contests, which were often grand, singular events, chariot races were a constant fixture, a staple of Roman public life woven into the very fabric of their calendar. Throughout the year, Ludi Circenses, the public games, featured races held frequently, sometimes for days on end. This meant that charioteers, particularly those employed by the powerful racing factions, were subjected to repetitive exposure in an incredibly high-risk environment. It wasn't just a single deadly encounter, but a relentless gauntlet of speed, collision, and near misses. Over centuries, this constant, repetitive exposure to potential catastrophe naturally led to a significantly higher cumulative death toll, far surpassing the more sporadic, albeit equally brutal, gladiatorial combats. Within this deadly system, a stark hierarchy existed. While a few superstar charioteers, like the legendary Diacles, could amass fortunes and achieve celebrity status, their immense value was the exception, not the rule. For many drivers, especially novices or those in less prominent factions, they were viewed as economically expendable assets. The sheer volume of races created an insatiable demand for drivers, a constant churn that was largely met by enslaved individuals or members of Rome's lower classes, desperate for a chance at glory or freedom. This economic reality meant that while chariots and horses represented significant investments, the human element was often treated as more replaceable, particularly when compared to the highly trained, singular focus on a gladiator's individual prowess and eventual fate. Life in the racing stables was cheap. To truly understand the scale of this human sacrifice, we must delve into the Roman psyche itself. This was a society with a deep-seated fascination with violent spectacle, a reflection of their martial culture and an almost divine desire for control over life and death. From the gladiatorial arena to the racetracks, the Romans reveled in witnessing extremes. The thrill wasn't just in victory, but in the near certainty of carnage. This obsession fueled an insatiable demand for ever more thrilling, and thus inherently dangerous, entertainment. Public opinion, the emperor's decree, and the economic engines of the games all conspired to prioritize the breathtaking spectacle over any concept of individual well-being. Human life, whether of a gladiator or a charioteer, became a commodity to be dramatically consumed for the pleasure of the masses, at virtually any cost. For both gladiators and charioteers, the path to glory often led through the gates of death. Both could achieve a form of immortality, their deeds commemorated on monuments and epitaphs that celebrated their bravery and skill. Yet, even in death, a stark difference emerges. A fallen gladiator's final, individual struggle was often recounted with dramatic detail, his name etched into memory. For charioteers, while superstar names like Scorpus and Diacles gained legendary status, the sheer anonymous number of those who perished in the chaotic pileups and fatal collisions tells a different story. Many more charioteers met their end swiftly, violently, and without individual recognition, their names lost to the sands of the arena. Their deaths became part of the broader, overwhelming death toll, a chilling statistic within the grand, bloody tapestry of Roman racing. So, how did chariot racing become Rome's deadliest spectacle? It was a fatal equation, a unique confluence of factors that created a cumulatively deadlier environment than the arena. Combine the extreme, uncontrolled speed of multiple chariots, vehicles that were intentionally fragile, designed for lightweight agility rather than driver protection, with the untamed, unpredictable power of up to 4 horses per team. Add mass participation, with a dozen or more chariots jostling for position on a treacherous track, often designed with sharp turns and narrow chicanes. Then, strip away any semblance of safety measures, and you have a recipe for unparalleled disaster. The gladiatorial arena, for all its brutality, featured more controlled, individual combat. The circus was a lottery of lethal chaos, a perfect storm where every element contributed to a truly shocking death toll. Once a charioteer fell, the spectacle continued with grim efficiency. There was no pausing the race for a fallen driver. The show, quite literally, had to go on. Bodies and debris were often cleared rapidly, sometimes even as the race continued around them. This was a testament to Roman pragmatism, certainly, but also to the desensitized nature of the crowds. They expected carnage. They craved the visceral thrill of near death and actual death. Individual lives were secondary. almost negligible in comparison to the ongoing spectacle. Attendants, sometimes called luminarii, moved with an almost surgical detachment, dragging away the injured or the dead, making way for the next thundering pass of the chariots. The ground might be briefly raked, a pool of blood covered, but the roar of the crowd never faltered, their hunger for entertainment unabated. Despite the stark statistical reality that chariot racing claimed far more lives, gladiators remain the enduring, iconic symbol of Roman violence in popular culture. But why? The individual, dramatic combat of the gladiator, the clear narrative of a single man facing down death, or triumphing against overwhelming odds, captured the historical and modern imagination more profoundly. His struggles were personal, his fate often decided by the emperor's thumb. The charioteer's death, though more frequent, was often chaotic, anonymous, and part of a larger, indistinguishable maelstrom. It lacked the singular, dramatic narrative that makes for compelling storytelling. The gladiator's fight was a primal duel. The charioteer's end, often a blur of speed and splintered wood, became a grim footnote in the grand, deadly spectacle of the Roman circus. The gladiator is the face of Roman brutality, but the charioteer represents its true, overwhelming death toll. From the dust-choked arenas to the thunderous tracks, our journey has unearthed a profound and startling truth. The myth of the gladiator as Rome's deadliest performer, while powerful, has been eclipsed by the relentless, often anonymous, fatalities of the charioteer. We've seen how the sheer scale of the events, the breakneck speeds, the inherent fragility of chariots, the unpredictability of thousands of pounds of horseflesh, and the complete absence of safety measures conspired to make every race a deadly lottery. Compounded by the astonishing frequency of these spectacles, the statistical reality is undeniable. The spina of the Circus Maximus was soaked in more blood than the sands of any gladiatorial arena. This revelation forces us to reconsider the true cost of bread and circuses. It was a society where immense crowds demanded ever greater thrills, and where human life, particularly that of slaves, freedmen, and the desperate, was an acceptable sacrifice for spectacular entertainment. Our preconceived notions of Roman brutality, often focused solely on the visceral violence of gladiatorial combat, must now expand to encompass the widespread, mechanical, and often overlooked carnage of the chariot race. The Romans loved spectacle, and they paid for it with lives. This deeper understanding challenges us to look beyond the sensational and appreciate the full, shocking death toll that fueled the greatest empire the world had ever known.